to borrow money from the Central Bank of England. And even though America won the war and its independence, it was far from winning the battle against this central bank concept, which was still, they were basically still controlled by Britain when it came to money. And money is power. Now, the definition of a central bank is an institution that issues and regulates the currency of an entire nation. They are in control of the interest rates. The government does not create its own money. The Federal Reserve loans the government money. And the government, as I already said, doesn't make its money. It loans the government. It loans the money from the Federal Reserve at interest. So it's the money that they asked for plus interest, whatever that is. It'd be different depending on the amount. I can write you a simple equation to understand this. This would be the dollar amount produced. So let's say, $100 is what the Federal Reserve gave to the United States plus X, and X is the interest, which we have to pay back. And the central bank concept is obviously a monopoly. A monopoly is something that can't go out of business. It's something that's protected by government, or it's so rich and corrupt that there's no way that it can go out of business. It can't be bought out. It can't be beaten by competition. And that's what business is supposed to be all about. Businesses are supposed to go in and out of business due to competition, because if someone has better products, you're obviously going to buy from them instead of buying the not so good products from the old company. And with all of this said, where does the money to pay for that debt come from? To pay X. It comes from, a lot of it comes from your federal income tax. And if this perpetual system, this perpetuating system doesn't end, the people in the government can never get out of this exchange of debt. It's just going to be an endless cycle. It goes on and on forever. Now, this is a quote from Thomas Jefferson. "I sincerely believe that banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies." So the central bank, had gone on into the Great Depression era, 1920s, around there, in order to continue this game of international banks in a time when people were starting to lose faith in this sort of system, because they knew what was going on. They knew they were being scammed. J.P. Morgan spread rumors in order to have legislation passed that would allow the Federal Reserve to stay in power. He spread rumors that claimed that the major banks in New York were bankrupt. This caused people to withdraw their money in fear of losing it. And this, again, is the same principle as I said before, the problem, reaction, solution. They wanted this central bank to be created so that these international bankers, such as J.P. Morgan, other ones are the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, them as well. So that's their purpose. So they create this problem. There's a reaction, which is people panic, and then they need a solution so that this doesn't happen again, so we don't lose all of our money again. We're going to get the central bank, which ended up being the Federal Reserve. And that's when that institution was born, and it's still in effect today. It's on your dollar bills if you look on your dollar bills. And this system helped bring about the Great Depression, and after that, the financial crash. The gold standard was removed in 1933 by an executive order by the president at that time. I honestly can't remember which president it was. But this executive order allowed the government to take all the remaining gold bullion in the country on threat of imprisonment for 10 years or more. Now think about that. If you didn't give up your gold that you had, they could throw you in jail for 10 years. That's criminal. That's criminal. I don't want someone coming and taking from me. That's theft. That's criminal. This is a criminal act. Now, all of your dollar bills produced before 1933 were redeemable in gold or silver. But now, if you look on your dollar bill, it just says legal tender, and that's backed by nothing. Your dollars, they're not backed by anything anymore. It's just a piece of paper, but we still trade with it. Still gets you food. Now, one of the most common misconceptions about the Federal Reserve is that it is federal, which it's obviously not, because the government has to go to them for the money to be created. The Federal Reserve is a private institution. It is owned by private people. It's a private investment. So that's how they deceive people, by calling it the Federal Reserve, so that it sounds like it's a government institution. We tried to avoid, as I said before in the beginning, when we were all colonies in the United States. We weren't quite the United States yet. We tried to avoid this whole fiasco when we became independent after the war, but it still happened. All our forefathers, all the guys who wrote the Constitution, they all knew about this bank, this central bank, and they wanted to get rid of it, but it didn't happen. We're still fighting the battle today. And this is something else. Getting back to the federal income tax. The federal income tax is completely unconstitutional. It is a direct, unapportioned tax. And it was written in the Constitution that in order for that to legally happen, the required number of states needed to ratify the amendment. I can't remember the number, but it was never even met. And this is even cited in modern court cases today. So it was never constitutionally done, legally, this federal tax, this federal income tax. And today, this may make you flinch for you workers, but 25% of the worker's income goes towards the federal income tax. In other words, this is slavery. 3 months of your yearly earnings go towards this. Now, slavery, what is the definition of slavery? Isn't it working for nothing? So 3 months out of the year, you're working for nothing. You're working for somebody else. That's theft, and that's slavery. Now, a lot of this money that comes out of the federal income tax goes toward fixing this perpetual system of debt that this Federal Reserve has created. So it's a never-ending system of debt, but you're paying towards it, and you know that it can't be fixed. So, and you're not getting real government service from this money. I don't care what they say. You're not. The international bankers, they're so rich, they obviously make money from wars. Because when governments do go to war, wars are expensive, and they have to borrow a lot of money, which is in turn is more interest that goes towards the Federal Reserve. I got it. Because when you go to war, you got to buy for weapons, your planes, your ships, etc., all that stuff. And that all costs money, and governments, in order to pay for that, have to borrow from the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve gets all that interest money paid back to them. And to cite a specific example, it is even claimed that international bankers were responsible for the sinking of the Lusitania, and this is what resulted in World War I. Because they knew that that ship, it went into German waters, and they knew that if they went into German waters, it was going to get shot down, because they're not allowed to do that. That's their laws over there. And there was even an ad in the paper, I believe it was the New York Times, that warned about the risks of going on the ship, and I don't think people saw it. It said, if you get on the ship, you're in risk of being sunk by the Germans. The ship was in German waters, as I said before. It was sunk by torpedoes, killed 1,200 people, and that's what ignited World War I. And going back again to problem, reaction, solution. They created the problem in order to get more money to the Federal Reserve because they had to pay, the government had to pay the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve made money from that war. The reaction was people went haywire. They're like, oh, well, we need to go to war against the Germans, which is what happened. That was the reaction. And then the solution was war. I only have 5 more minutes left. Yeah. Now this is a little different every time I do it, so we'll see how it goes this time. Actually, I've only practiced this once. This is just kind of an outpouring from my heart. I would ask you all, if you would like, to close your eyes for a moment. Don't forget everything I just said, but kind of let it drift away for just a moment and relax. Let your mind be at peace, because regardless of all this evil that's going on, I know that in the end, you cannot win. As they say, in the end, good will out. Good will win. And I think what a lot of people forget in the hustle and bustle of everyday life is that we're all the same in essence, because we all come from the same place. We're all a part of that undefinable, infinite goodness that exists out there. And in other words, you could call it infinite consciousness. That ineffable source, the very beginning, the origin of all creation, which is where we come from. And we come here to experience life, to learn things. We're here to learn. We're here to learn several lessons. We're here to learn love, to learn companionship, many other lessons as well, charity, being happy and gracious towards others. And eventually we're all going to go back. We're all going to go back to that place that we started from, with the lessons that we've learned here. And it's important that we don't forget where we came from in everyday life. We're more than just normal human beings. We're way more than that because of where we come from. We are spiritual beings trying to live a physical existence. We know pure love and infinite consciousness and pure and infinite love, all those things, which is what we strive to get back to. Why do we fight wars? Why do we do all these things? That's the same question I ask. But in the end, it doesn't mean anything, because only love can prevail. If we sit and we meditate on this every now and then, we'll never forget what we are. We're more than just human beings. We're celestial beings. And one day, we'll come back to that goodness that we've always known. We'll know to learn and to love and to grow and to flourish into that which the infinite goodness would have us become. Whatever that goodness may be. It's so great and unfathomable that I can't even describe it with words, which is why we must take time to reflect and think about the great divine. And as this speech comes to a close, I ask that you all go out into the world and you help spread love and peace, because this world does not have enough of it. There's too much hate, too much war, too much crime going on out there. And we all bicker about pointless things, about things that don't even really matter. We have to remember what does matter. Love and peace. Carry that with you. Carry the messages I've taught you today. Carry that with you as well. And plant the seed for future generations and for the future of this world. I thank you very much for coming out today. That is the end of my speech.